Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we are here with Lincoln Howell, who is the CEO of Ampleo. How are you?
Doing well.
Thank you for joining us. I'm familiar with you guys, and I don't know, in the last 3 or 4 years, there's kind of a name change, right?
Yes,
And Ampleo is fun to say.
it is. It's a great brand. Originally we were CFO Solutions back in 1996, and then that was eventually rebranded to Advanced CFO. A lot of people still know us as Advanced CFO. And then early in the pandemic, we became Ampleo, which opened up some of the opportunity to extend some of the services beyond just core CFO offerings.
Yeah, and we'll get into all of that. How long have you been with Ampleo, and what was kind of the founding story? Where did the idea come from?
So I've been with Ampleo for a little over a year. The founding story, as I mentioned, goes back to 1996 with Kent Thomas. And that actually originated, I guess as so many businesses do, out of necessity. He had a family medical emergency that really required that he do something a little differently. So he effectively started fractionally consulting for a number of incredible startups, and effectively pioneered the space long before fractional was cool.
Yeah. And for those that aren't familiar with the model, it's you have a CFO, but it's for a certain allotment of hours or weeks throughout the year. You don't have to keep them on payroll, right?
Exactly. So some of our clients like to bring in executives on an hourly basis. Some of them like to bring them in on a fixed fee basis, so they'll come in a day or two a week. Some of them are interim basis, so it's only a 2 or 3 month cycle. And then we also have some projects that are more kind of fixed deliverable type projects, but there's a lot of flexibility based on what the client needs.
Yeah. And as far as the clients go, big, small, medium, where do you guys stand now?
So we cover a broad range of different client types, but we specialize in that $30 to $100 million range. That typically gets to a point where they realize they're swimming in deeper water than they may know what to do with. And ultimately, what we do with most of our clients is grow them to the point where hiring a full-time position tends to be the next step in their growth story.
Gotcha. And so in this world, you've got bookkeepers, CFOs, accountants, tax guy, right? Where do you guys land and fit? What do you do? What do you not do?
So we have in our core suite, we offer on the finance side, everything from bookkeeping to controllership and CFO work, but we specialize on the CFO side. There are a number of firms out there that will provide, daily bookkeeping for someone, but what Ampleo focuses on is that real strategic insight, delivering the value that you can't find anywhere else. So most of our business is with businesses that need, with clients that need that extra bit of strategic input, the experience that comes from someone who has built and sold a business, the kind of experience that you can't get just shopping up the street.
Yeah. And I assume you've seen a spreadsheet or two in your day.
A few.
And those are just numbers, right? But there's a strategy behind all of those. So a lot of folks that I've had on this podcast, just as an example, they don't like that part of the business, right? They know it's important, but it's not what they want to do. They either want to be selling or building or something. But if you don't tend to your knitting on the financial side, you don't get to do that for very long.
That's right.
So strategically, just an example with kind of a middle of the road client that you guys have, not the biggest, not the smallest. Mm-hmm. How would one of your employees, one of your team members strategically interact with the team once they were brought on as the fractional CFO?
So a fractional CFO might come in and if that client already has some other bookkeeping or other controllers on staff, that fractional CFO may come in and help to coach and guide and to lead the rest of the existing team. They can help establish the policies, the procedures, and the leadership. So to your point, there are a lot of different spreadsheets out there, but it takes a different kind of experience to recognize the story behind the numbers and what it means for the business going forward. In some cases, the client doesn't have a team on staff, in which case Ampleo can bring in additional resources to help fill out the skills as needed.
Yeah. And for people with your skill set and your team's skill set, you do actually see the story in the financials, right?
Yes, absolutely. Interestingly, I think Amplio got its roots, its foundation with the financial services because I think most companies tend to recognize the need for really sound financial insight before they recognize the need for some of these other growth oriented functions like marketing and like HR. Um, but being able to understand the financial aspect is huge. Far too often, you have small growth companies that have one idea of how their business is going or an idea of how they need to scale it, how they need to grow it. But it requires somebody who's been there, done that, who can understand the financial structure to identify the pitfalls, and help them to pick the right course and execute it.
Yeah. How often in these interactions is there like this, oh no, or like, thank you, I can actually see things clearer?
It's pretty often. I would say the analogy of an iceberg is not uncommon,
Yeah.
where oftentimes clients will come to Amplio saying, "Hey, I have this need," and we'll certainly go in and we'll help them with that need. But then shortly thereafter, we're able to say, "Now you got to keep an eye on this and this and this," and they realize there was a whole universe of other considerations and strategic challenges that are just around the corner that they wouldn't have seen until it hit them broadside.
Yeah. And as they progress and like are successful operationally and their books are in better shape, do you guys have like an evolution within your team that somebody might have more experience at this level of revenue or this type of company? Do you pass things back and forth between your team, or is it just one person that sticks with them?
So I would say there are a couple different ways that we can approach that. There are some businesses that are unique enough that a lot of the value comes when you have somebody that really knows the business well. But to your point, there are times where you need skills or you need some kind of skill set that goes beyond what that person may have. And that's one of the great things about Amplio. We've built an entire infrastructure for collaboration so that Amplio clients don't just get the strength of the one consultant or the two consultants that are helping them on a day-to-day basis. They actually get the strength of the entire Amplio team because our consultants are really good at raising their hand, seeking out advice from others, and bringing the best of the entire team to bear for every single client.
Yeah. How's it evolved over the last kind of 3 years where a lot of folks needed fractional CFOs, at least in my opinion, more than they might have previously because it was so schizophrenic?
So I would say over the last 3 years, the pandemic has certainly helped the business model because historically, I would say even finance roles were those that people assumed needed to be there on site. But the pandemic helped clients realize there is a lot of value that can be gleaned from remote workers or workers that are in the office on a part-time fractional basis. And so over the last 3 years, we've seen a tremendous growth in clients who recognize I can get what I need from a fractional resource at that better price point without having to worry about all of the infrastructure, the overhead, the office space that you might otherwise plan on for a full-time on-site professional.
Yeah. And if you guys do your job right, I'm just assuming here, like the company will continue to be successful and grow. Do you ever like get phased out to the point where it's like you now need like a not fractional CFO, you need a full-time?
Yes, exactly. And that is one of the things that we do with our consultants. There are, in fact, some of our best consultants. The challenge that we run into is that they're also the ones that like to get recruited or that get recruited away by some of our best, highest growth clients.
Yeah.
And that's just part of what we do, right? We're happy to help be that bridge to bring good talent to companies on a full-time basis where there's an appropriate fit. But that's absolutely the normal life cycle of an Amplio engagement is that you reach a point where then they bring in full-time talent. We also can help them find that talent if it's not one of our own. And usually, though, it doesn't mean that there's a separation with Amplio because there are typically, by that point, a number of other different engagements that clients find, okay, we can still use the same kind of resource to help with that marketing or these HR challenges too.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. A lot's changed since 1996. And you guys over the years have been a big part of that. From a 30,000 foot view, what's it been like to like follow the tech ecosystem and kind of the boom of Silicon Slopes over the last decade and a half?
So this is an interesting question for me because my experience is a little different. I'm a University of Utah graduate, and I left the state of Utah back in 2002, shortly after 9/11. And so at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity in the state of Utah for the kind of businesses and opportunities I was looking for. And so for the next 15 years, I was keeping an eye on what was happening in Utah and what was happening as Silicon Slopes was first, founded and started building and went from aspirational to suddenly catching everybody's eye and realizing this is the real deal. These are incredible companies that are being formed and grown and sold right here in the heart of the Wasatch Front. And so it was really in these last 10 years where, as I was winding up other portions of my career, that I recognized this is an incredible location, not only because of the entrepreneurial spirit that's here. It's really unparalleled by, so many of the other places across the country and world that I've lived. And it's a unique combination of skills and ambition and entrepreneurial spirit that continues to give rise to amazing companies.
Yeah. So when you came back, it was like a whole different world.
Yes.
Interesting. And as I'm sitting here thinking, you got VCs that are probably involved with a lot of your companies, right? With your clients.
Yes.
How do you guys interact with them?
So whether it's a private equity firm, a family office, a venture capital firm, we have a number of partners where they have a portfolio of different companies, and Ampleo is often a great partner and a resource to help them as they ramp those companies up, as they work them through their life cycle. It really just depends on what each client or what each company may look like. But where we tend to add a lot of value is where we get to know some of those firms. We get to understand the kind of value drivers that they're looking for and the opportunity, the investment thesis that leads to each of their purchases, so that we can then bring in a consistent execution model and skill set to help realize what they're looking for.
Gotcha. I get the impression that like you and your team like find this very enjoyable, right? The bookkeeping, the CFOing, all of that. You've done a lot in your career, but like you've come back to this point because I think you find a lot of value in it. What are some of your favorite stories of like helping a client that might have been going in a perilous direction, but the boat got pointed in the right direction thanks to you guys?
So there are so many great stories that happen on this front. Whether it's Ampleo covers a lot of different industries. We have a number of different clients that are in the restaurant industry, for example, and to see an owner who started out in a food truck and then branched out into a couple locations, then go to a couple hundred locations, and then get to a point where they can receive a secondary and cash out with an extraordinary win for their family. Those are the kind of experiences where you recognize it's not just about building a great spreadsheet with numbers that have more zeros. We have an opportunity to have a real impact on individuals, on their lives. And this is not just a great, now we can go to Disney World. This is generational wealth type of outcomes that really make a big difference for those individuals. And that's one of the key things that motivates us. It's not just about the business, it's about the people behind the business.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of thank yous along the way, which is rewarding, right? Because the spreadsheets don't tell you that.
That's right.
People do. So you could also branch out, right? Like you don't need to be the world's most sophisticated business person to see that there's fractional services that are there for the taking. How have you guys thought about that over the years? How have you kind of avoided chasing the squirrels? What was like picking the right time to do all of that? And ultimately, how do you implement like fractional CMO or fractional HR?
So it's been an interesting journey. I would say that over the years, we've seen clients who have said, hey, we could use a little more of help with this and with that. And we've been able to find the right consultants and get the right talent there to help them. But one important part of what Ampleo delivers is helping the clients to recognize that we really do have the skill set that they need.
Mhm.
And we will recognize and acknowledge when we may have a gap. But the interesting thing here is that as we've continued to grow and as we've reached a point where we found, look, there's a critical mass of clients needing marketing services, for example, then that inflection point really hits where you realize people don't want to buy marketing services from a CFO. They want to buy those from somebody who really knows marketing in and out. And so that's been a great opportunity where we have Joe Grover now as a new partner leading out the development of our marketing platform, our marketing division. Similarly, we have Abby Martin, who just joined, and she's helping to lead out with the continued growth in our HR division. So ultimately, what it comes down to is that your growth trajectory is, I think, coupled with not only what you learn from the market, from your clients, what their needs are, but also, most importantly, having an incredible leadership team and a talent that can help bring not only the services, but the clients together in a way that delivers the most value.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, how has the CMO, the fractional CMO, gone so far?
It's been great. It's been exciting to see, I think, the convergence of where finance and marketing and HR all come together. So let me give you an example. One of the things that we do in Ampleo is that we do transaction support, right? So buy side, sell side, whether it's quality of earnings, valuations. But one interesting thing is also pitch decks, right? All too often people feel like all I need to do is come up with a PowerPoint and I'll be able to raise that capital or execute this sale transaction. But it really takes a unique skill of not only having the right numbers in the first place,
Yeah.
but then having the right skill to tell your unique story. And so bringing these different divisions together in these types of services, it's exciting to see how that's coming together and delivering real results for these clients.
I bet. Yeah, that's cool because that is the confluence there of those three important parts. What are some, just with historical context, some mistakes that it seems like a lot of companies make or repeat regardless of industry when it comes to like bookkeeping and CFOing?
Okay. So I think, let me just describe it this way. There is a certain amount of day-to-day nuts and bolts work that's required to maintain a business. But there's also a certain amount of real strategic execution that has to take place. The way I see it, we live in an on-demand world. We require just the right resource in just the right amount at just the right time. And all too often, you see small companies that are bootstrapping it, that are watching every single dollar come through, and they just feel like, I can't afford to do anything other than use my good friend or my neighbor from up the road, and we'll just get by.
Mm-hmm.
And what that turns into is they end up learning the same lessons over and over that others in their space have already learned. And so at the same time, you say you can't afford to learn on your own experience lessons that are readily available in the market. Your competition will eat you up.
Yeah.
You can also say you can't afford not to take advantage of the available fractional talent that is there and excited to help you achieve your growth potential, and help you shortcut all of the time and the challenges and the pitfalls that you'll eventually work your way through, but maybe not before the competition really takes a stronger foothold in your space.
Yeah. And it'll be a lot less painful.
Yes, indeed.
You guys have an event called the Growth Summit. How many years has this been going on? When is it this year? And what are the details about it?
Yeah, so this has been going on for over 6 years. We had 1 year off during the pandemic. Our next event is coming up on September 12th. And this is a great summit that really brings together incredible leaders, incredible executives, and really provides two different sources of value. One is just getting side by side, face to face, meeting more people, meeting additional people that have dealt with the kind of challenges you are, and building a network. Whereas the second piece is we work hard to bring some incredibly strong speakers to come in and bring insights and guidance around what's happening in the current market, how to think through transactions, how to think about compensation, how to think about HR challenges and what growth initiatives are taking place. So it's a combination of surrounding yourself with great people and consuming some of the best content out there and being able to apply that into your business. Our next summit is coming up here on September 12th.
Cool. Where's it going to be at?
Up in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Yep.
So that would probably be applicable to younger companies as well as like more established.
Yes, exactly. So our sweet spot, as mentioned earlier, tends to be with some of those younger and growth-oriented companies. But as we continue to expand, historically, it's been more heavily focused on CFO. And what you'll see this year is an extended effort and an extended content base that will really circle around all of the different elements and the way that it comes together across these different functions to unlock a company's growth potential.
Yeah. And you don't have to like hawk them on LinkedIn or send emails. They're just going to be there.
Right. Exactly.
You can have like really fun, normal conversations. All right. Of all the industries out there, of all the CFOs, who's got the hardest job?
Of all the industries and all the CFOs.
Oh, airlines, freight, packaging, some weird SaaS thing. Like, which is the hardest industry to be a CFO in?
You know, I would compare that to, so I've moved 14 times over the years for career and school. And the same answer I give for what's the best place to live, I'm going to give for this question here. It really depends. Because if you were to go back 3 years in the middle of the pandemic when you had cargo containers that were running at 5,000 a container and being delivered in 30 to 40 days, that then overnight became 30,000 a container and weren't delivering for 6 to 9 months, then it would have been hardest to be a CFO or an executive in a manufacturing-based business. Whereas if you turn the table and say what's happening at different during different macroeconomic cycles, on whether it's healthcare or SaaS or e-commerce, every single one has its own unique set of barriers, of challenges, and of opportunities. And I think that's one of the things that people will continue to see from Ampleo is that it's not just generic CFO services. We're cultivating and growing an incredible bench strength of people with very specific vertical experience so that regardless of what industry is the hardest, we'll have somebody there to help them navigate those challenges and pitfalls.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you got those folks that are like, we'll take the bull by the horns and go for it. Cause like my daughter asked me when we were at Disneyland, like, who keeps track of all of this? It's like, I don't know, but they couldn't pay me enough. It's like, well, it's like Disneyland. I'm like, again, it's too many moving parts for my feeble brain.
Well, I have a good friend who actually works down at Disney in Southern California. We'll connect them at some point.
Yeah, if I'm the CFO of Disney, like that'll be the last day it's ever opened, right? Because I can imagine there's certain industries where some of these are like kind of made up new terms, right? Like, oh, there's a new acronym of how you're supposed to keep track of that. I remember Groupon all those years ago had some like what some people were saying, you guys are making stuff up as far as like how you keep track of stuff. And so like, it's not like a stodgy industry. You got to be pretty flexible and adaptable.
Exactly. In fact, and so we call those our key performance indicators. Every business has a multitude of choices around what are they going to choose to measure, what are they going to choose to pay attention to, and that's a key part of what a real seasoned executive can deliver, is helping them to recognize these are the metrics that you should be paying attention to, whereas these are the metrics that you can put off to the side. We can look at them periodically, but they're not going to move the needle as much as 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. And for a lot of the public companies, it boils down to like 4 times a year, you got to like go tell people. And every once in a while when I'm bored, I'll hop on an earnings call, whether I own stock in it or not. And I always just have so much empathy for the CFO. Is oh, it was a great quarter. We missed it by a penny or whatever, right? And then they just get hammered. And I don't know if there's anything they could have done.
Right.
Other than like take your medicine. So like of all the C-suite, I think I have the most respect for the CFO. Actually that is true. Because it's the one job I know I wouldn't be good at. And I'm just glad there's people like that out there. All right. So we've mentioned like you guys are branching out into new verticals. With you as the CEO, how do you position Ampleo to like grow in a fun, lucrative way that like is sustainable?
So one of the things that is critical for the growth in this kind of a space is partners. And so we've added 5 new partners this year already. And these partners are going to continue to drive additional focus on niches within the CFO space, vertical market focus. We have a partner who's just killing it with solar and energy companies. There's a very unique requirement for those businesses that if you don't have the right skill and experience, you could easily fall victim to some real costly mistakes on compliance and regulatory filings and things like that. So these new partners are really the key part of Ampleo's growth story and where we'll head going forward. Because without those partners, without the people that are passionate about delivering the spreadsheets, delivering the marketing strategies, delivering the policies, procedures, the team with the HR side that are going to be core to a business's outcome, to their success or their failure, right? Without those people in place, Ampleo won't grow, and we won't be able to influence as many clients as we hope to. So you'll definitely see continued growth in real exciting ways with additional partners to help guide the consultants, find the clients, make that incredible match, and participate in the growth of Ampleo as we scale.
Yeah. And you have a cool, interesting hobby we're going to get to in a second. It's shipbuilding.
Yes.
Just to set the table. But do you guys get involved with mergers and acquisitions?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So, yeah, as I mentioned, we have within our space, we have a whole spectrum from what I would say is run rate CFO type work and or real growth oriented CMO, chief marketing officer, or CHRO, our HR executives. But within that finance, we have some specialty practices, including a turnaround practice that may include a variety of bankruptcy, court-ordered receiverships, or a number of other tougher situations to resolve. But also the whole universe of M&A, buy, sell side transactions. How do we help? Whether it's on the purchasing side, how do we make sure we validate the quality of the earnings? Or on the sales side, how do we get that story told, as we mentioned, with the right financials and the right marketing and the right story to help maximize the value for that seller? We'll support clients in all of those different situations.
And I assume that's kind of fun because it's sometimes a start game for some and it's an end game for others, right? Like
Yes.
They're saying bon voyage and others are taking it.
Yep.
You're like, all right, we'll go build this.
Yep. And some days you're just as excited to be starting a new chapter, and other days you're just as excited to see that chapter close and book the win and be able to watch people go into that next chapter of their lives.
Yeah. Again, reason 10 million and one why I wouldn't be a good CFO is people are always asking me about valuations, and I say, just 5 times EBITDA. But they're like, that's not really good advice, is it? Like, you asked me. But that's not the way the world works. Let's talk a little bit about this hobby of shipbuilding. How did you get into it, and why do you find it enjoyable? And do you have like cool eureka moments while you're building these ships for your business?
Yeah. So it started. This is actually is one of my more recent hobbies, and started during the pandemic. I found an Amazon Prime special on a 3D what was it? The Pirates of the Caribbean ship, right? The Black Pearl. And so put that puzzle together, and in the course of doing that, became intrigued by how the different rigging and lanyards and the shrouds and the dead eyes would come together, and that just became fascinating to me. It gave me a glimpse of how this incredible machine at the time was structured, how it was built, and had to take those next steps and start exploring other ways of this ship building. So what I love about it is not only the ability to recognize how little movements by pulling a single rope can have all the difference in the world on the orientation of a given sail. And if you don't know which rope to pull and which way to orient that sail, then you'll be stuck in the water. But with that right experience set, with that right skill, those talented sailors can know which rope, know how to orient it, catch the wind, and go exactly to their chosen destination. So there are so many elements of shipbuilding, not only just the attention to detail, and the challenge of really bringing it all together, but the more practical applications of how little things can have such a big impact in the world of these businesses is really, really motivating.
Yeah, I love it. I set you up perfect for that one. Because if you put the comma in the wrong place in your day job at Ampleo, there's consequences to that, right? And if you screw up in like a sailing maneuver to get back into the wind, you screwed it up, and there's consequences there too.
Exactly. Yep. I love it.
Yeah. Well, congrats to you and your team, Lincoln. You guys have been a critical part of the ecosystem for a long time, and like I've heard a lot of stories over the years of companies that have very much enjoyed working with y'all. So thank you for your time today, and best of luck on these broad ambitions that you have coming up in the future.
Thank you, Garrett. Sure appreciate you inviting me in today.
You bet.